Hey guys, it's Faisal with Costello Real Estate here in North Carolina. And if you clicked on this, that means you're in the market for a home, and that's very exciting. There's a couple things you should know about the process and expenses prior to entering the market. Now let's start with the process. The first thing you need to do is get pre-qualified, specifically pre-approved. And there is a difference between pre-qualified and pre-approved. When you go to your lender, make sure you get a full pre-approval. And not just a pre-qualification. Now, when you're talking to your lender, you could talk to your bank, you could talk to a broker, or if someone that your family or friend has used, reach out to them. I always recommend talking to 1, 2, 3 lenders. That way you can compare rates and see which one you're most comfortable with. Now, after you're pre-approved and you know your down payment, you know your closing costs, you know your rate, and you feel comfortable with that, it's time to find a home. And this is when you find an agent that you feel comfortable working with. And the best thing to do is go through your wants and needs and see what wants could be transitioned into needs and what needs that you don't really need. So I try to focus on the needs with my clients because those are going to be the selling points of the home. And at the end of the day, that's the reason you're moving, to satisfy those needs that you're looking for. So once you find the property, this is when you'll be submitting an official offer to the seller saying you want to purchase a home. Now with that offer, there's a couple big things in it. There's the purchase price, there's the due diligence deposit, and also the earnest money deposit. Now the purchase price lately, if you're looking in a competitive area, has been going over asking. There's people submitting over asking on properties that are in high demand. And this is just the reality of our market today. And this comes at a concern later when the bank orders an appraisal on the home. And we'll get to that in a second. So the due diligence deposit is going to be due once the offer is accepted. And it could range anywhere from $1,000 to $20,000 depending on how competitive the home is. And also with that due diligence deposit, there's also a due diligence period, which basically is an inspection period for you to inspect the home and make sure there's nothing you don't know about, inside the walls or in the crawl space or in the attic. With all that being squared away, that's also usually when you negotiate on the home with the seller. And once you guys have agreed on repairs or concessions, it'd be smooth sailing to closing. Now the earnest money deposit is similar to the due diligence deposit, but it's held by the closing attorney. The seller does not touch the earnest money deposit, and it gets credited back to you at closing. And so does due diligence. The only way to lose those deposits if you terminate on the home. Both those deposits come back to you at closing as a credit. So if you were to terminate on the deal prior to due diligence ending, that would mean you would lose your due diligence deposit, but keep your earnest money deposit. If you terminate after the due diligence period is over, you would lose both deposits. Now, as you can see, sellers care about due diligence because that's the check they're going to be cashing. Whereas earnest money isn't as popular because it's held by the attorney. So we've been seeing homes, here in Raleigh and in Charlotte and hot areas having due diligence anywhere from $10,000 to $35,000, in some situations even higher than that. So it gets a little crazy depending on where you're looking and for what type of home you're looking for. So after the due diligence period has ended and we've agreed on negotiations, this is when you need to be in contact with your lender, making sure they have all the documents they need to issue that loan. Last thing you want to do is forget to send them a document and then we have to push closing. Another big aspect of purchasing is the appraisal. So when you purchase a home, the bank is going to order an appraisal on the property to see what you purchased it for and what they think the value of the home is. Now, if the value of the home comes under what we purchased it for, that means there's a gap and someone has to pay for that gap because the bank is not willing to lend on it. Say you bought a house for $100,000, but the bank says, hey, it's only worth 80. There's a $20K difference there and you got to figure out, okay, who's paying for that? There's a couple ways to do it. The seller can come down on price, or you guys would have to come out of pocket to bridge that gap. Usually in my experience, it's a mixture of both. And this is where having a realtor is very important. They need to be able to run comps on that property prior to submitting an offer to show you, hey, I think between, this price and this price, we're good. If we go higher than this, we might be running into appraisal issues. And that's where the realtor comes in handy and saves you money in the long run. And now at closing, it's usually called the settlement date, is when you sit down and sign a bunch of papers from the lender. Once the property records a couple hours later, that's when keys will be handed to you and you'll be able to go to your new home. Now, some expenses to talk about on the real estate side are inspections. I always recommend you get a home inspection, usually around $500. You could also do a pest, radon, and if it's a little farther out from the city, you might have to do a septic and well. And this all ensures that the property you're buying is safe and sound for your family. During showings, I also like to inspect the home, make sure if there's anything I can spot in my eye, I'm going to say something about it. Usually by looking at a home and looking in the crawl space and looking at the age of the units, you'll be able to tell if there's something else that's maybe hiding in the walls or in the attic or in the crawl space. So thank you guys so much. I hope this helped you in your search. And if you have any more questions, please reach out to me at 919-760-0048. I would love to help you in your next move. Thanks so much.